and welcome to Sarah's Stamper Retreat. Today we're going to be doing some faux watercolouring and we're going to use a few different techniques to this so that you can find one that you like, and they all give slightly different effects as well. So today we're going to be using this really cool kit that comes with the new Hunkydory Magazine Box Kit. So in the box kit you get a magazine which is full of ideas to show you how to use your kit. And then you also get this cute little stamp set, this lovely embossing folder, this die set, which looks like this, and then this paper kit. And I feel like this is, for me, what Hunkydory are most famous for, these kits on really gorgeous, adorable, scoreable cardstock. That's their cardstock. And they always have this lovely foiling on too. So you can see you get 4 sheets of toppers. And then these are really thick cardstock. How gorgeous is this piece? And these have got foiling on them as well. And then you've got these ones that are on the same beautiful thick cardstock but don't have the foiling on. And then we've got these glossy papers. So I think it's quite unusual to have kind of glossy papers in a kit. And actually I've just realised that these are also double-sided. And then we've got these pieces that are intended for the insides of your cards, so that you can kind of create those really premium looking cards with inserts in. So the first thing that we're going to use today, I've got 2 wet wipes here, both folded in quarters, and I'm going to create like a mini ink pad. So I've got Stampin' Up! Re-Inkers in Flirty Flamingo and in Melon Mambo. I'm just adding some of that to here, and then I'm just going to pop this over here so I can make sure that my fan fits on it, which it does. And I'm going to pop that on this bag so that it doesn't ruin my work surface. So then I'm going to use this spritzer and just add a bit more water onto here. And then I'm going to take this scrap of watercolour cardstock and I'm just going to play about with this on here. So I'm going to stamp this. I'm going to try adding some water to the stamp as well. And then I'm also going to see what happens if I add some water to my paper as well, and see what kind of effect we get if we do that. So this initial stage is just all about having a play. That is obviously too watery. So I think I like this look the best, where I've added a small amount of water to the cardstock but not too much. So I've got a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card blank, and then I've got a piece of blue cardstock and a piece of watercolour cardstock that I've cut down to 1/4 inch smaller than that. And with this blue cardstock I've cut out these 3 circles. Those circles measure nearly 2 inches. And I'm just going to draw around those circles onto the watercolour cardstock, and that will just give me an idea of where I want my fans to go. So then I'm just going to lightly spritz my cardstock, and then I'm going to use this to add on some of these fans. And then I'll stamp another one onto some spare cardstock. And with this one I'm going to take a blender pen and I'm just going to pull out some of that colour. And I feel like that actually looks really pretty, so I might do that on all of them. Obviously where these are a bit drier now, the colour's not coming out as much. That might be quite nice to have a bit of a subtler look underneath. If you wanted to get that kind of intensity, you could spray them again. Or you could do this with a wet paintbrush as opposed to a blending brush. So I'm going to cut out this fan. So I've decided to go with die cutting flowers. So I'm just going to add a bit of Melon Mambo ink to one side and a bit of Daffodil Delight ink to the other side. Both of those are Stampin' Up! Inks. of this acrylic block. And then you'll notice I've left the kind of waste in there. So then I'm going to colour the centre of the flower. So I'm just picking up the colour with my blender pen, and I'll just colour in the centres of those flowers. And I'll do a few before I pick up some more colour, because it helps with having a bit of a variation on that colour. And then what I'm going to do is pick up some of the pink, and I'm going to go round the outside first, so that the darker colour is round the outside of the flowers. And then I'm going to fill in those petals. So now I'm going to erase these lines. And then I'm going to use this with a Grateful Hearts sentiment, and I'm going to stamp that on here. And that didn't stamp as I wanted it to, so I'm going to take another piece of blue cardstock. I'm actually going to turn it over onto the smoother side, and I'm going to heat emboss that on here instead. I've stamped it a couple of times so I can see which one comes out better. And then I'm going to heat emboss that with the Opaque Bright White Superfine Embossing Powder from Wow. And I think this one just came out slightly better, so I'm going to use that one. I'm just going to cut around there. So then I'm going to grab some foam strips and I'm going to put them behind this piece of blue cardstock. And then I'm going to pop that up over the top of the watercolour cardstock. And then I'm going to add some foam strips behind here as well. Don't want to go all the way to the edges. And then I'm going to pop that one up over this one. And then I'm going to use a foam pad behind my sentiment. I'm going to pop that over here. I'm going to glue that onto my card front. And I'm going to glue these down here. So then I've got these cute Pinkfresh Studio Magenta glitter drops. And I'm just going to add one of those to the centre of each of the frames. And I'm just going to add some of these yellow gems among the flowers as well. So then there we go, that's that card finished. It's really pretty. So then for my next card, I want to get a kind of watercolour look using the embossing folder. So I've got a piece of watercolour cardstock here to fit the embossing folder, and I'm going to spray that. And then I'm going to grab my brayer and I'm going to ink it up using this Alpine Aster fresh dye ink from Ultimo. And then I'm going to just add that to the front of this embossing folder, so the purple side. And then I'm going to add that through my die cutting machine like this. So now I've got this kind of cool smushy watercolour-y look in the background. And then I'm going to use my Karin brush markers just to colour the raised bits of the embossing folder. So now we've got our gorgeous panel, and just to note, the colours that I used in the Karin markers were Apple, Blush and Cerise. And I think that kind of faux watercolour background makes it look quite sky-like because it's kind of patchy. So then I've decided that I want to use this on a card made with these modern oval dies, but I don't want to put this back through the die cutting machine because it will flatten this out. So there are two things you could do here. Number one, you could die cut this and then you could put it back in the embossing folder and put it back through your machine. But what I'm going to do, because I'm going to put a frame around it anyway, I'm just going to draw around it with my pencil, because I'm not too worried about the edges because I'm going to put a frame over the top. And then I'm just going to cut around that pencil line. So then I'm going to use this largest die to cut a shaped card blank. So to do that, I've got a card blank And I'm just overhanging this edge slightly so that I don't cut off the fold. So I'll just cut it like that. And then I'm going to use this one and the ones 2 sizes smaller to create a frame from pink cardstock as well. So then I've got my shape card front. And I'm just going to take a little slither off here so that it stands up properly. So I've just taken a teeny tiny bit off the back there. Now that'll stand up nicely rather than rocking and rolling. And I'm going to grab my glue and I'm going to add this to the front of my card. And you can see, because I cut it by hand and I went inside the die, it doesn't quite fit, but that's fine because that's why we've got this frame, to kind of hide all those edges. So then I'm going to glue that frame on. So I'm going to use a happy birthday stamp to heat emboss in white on this pink cardstock. So then I'm just going to round 2 of the corners on this with a corner rounder punch. And I'm going to put some foam pads on the back of there. So there's that card finish. I think that looks really pretty. So for this next card, I've got a 4x4 inch piece of watercolour cardstock, and you can see I've done one of these kind of faux watercolour bits here just to show you what we're aiming for, and I'm going to do another one down here. So to achieve this look, we're going to give the watercolour cardstock a bit of a spritz, and then I'm going to grab my Pinkalicious ink and I'm going to use this stamp. I'm going to give this stamp a bit of a spritz as well. And then I'm just going to stamp this down here. So then I'm going to grab my brush. I'm going to give that a bit more of a spritz because it's not quite wet enough. And then I'm just going to pull some of this ink across. So then I'm going to dab up the excess water. And then I'm going to go in again. So I'm going to ink up this. I'm going to spritz it. And then I'm going to stamp again, and I'm going to try and stamp in pretty much the same place. It doesn't need to be exact because we're kind of getting this kind of watercolory look. And then for the final time, I'm just going to dab off my stamp so there's not too much water on it. I'm going to ink it up again. I'm not going to spray it this time. And then I'm going to stamp it again. And this time we've got kind of a more defined image. So there we've got our kind of faux watercolour look. I'm going to pop that under there to dry so that it dries flat. And then in the meantime, I'm going to grab this piece of watercolour cardstock. You can see it's had loads of things cut out of it. And I'm just going to decorate this corner because I want it to go in this corner of my card. So I'm going to grab my archival ink pad and this little flower stem. And I'm going to put some scrap paper underneath because I don't want the archival ink on my work surface. And I want to stamp off the sides a little bit. So I'm just going to create a little pattern of these flowers. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my Karin Brushmarker Pro blender pen, and I'm just going to colour in each of the flowers with the blender pen. And the reason I'm going to do that is because then I can just dab some of this colour in the centre, and it will start kind of bleeding out with the blender pen. So I'm just going to help it out a little bit. And you get this nice kind of soft look to the flowers. So I'm going to do the same thing with the leaves, but I'm just going to put a little dab of green on those. And just let it kind of like blend out a little bit. And then I'm going to add a little pattern of like dots in between these just to add a little something to it. So then I want this kind of pattern paper that we've made to go across this corner, and I want it to look a bit like the lanterns are kind of hanging from it, which means I kind of want it to go from here to here. So now I can go and use my trimmer to cut that edge off. So then I'm going to stamp this Let the Celebration Begin sentiment down here. Then I'm going to glue this piece into this corner. So then I'm going to pop this small strip of the blue cardstock across that join. And then I'm going to glue that onto this piece of blue cardstock that is about 1/8 of an inch bigger, so 4 1/8 inches square. And then I've got this one which I stamped with my archival ink and then coloured with my Karin markers in the same way I did these. I'm just going to pop that up on some foam pads. So then I've actually decided to use this pink 5x5 inch card base, and then I'm going to use this big piece of double-sided foam sheet, and I'm going to pop that on the back of there, and I'm going to pop that up on my card blank, and then I'm just going to add this lantern. Then I just added on a few of these little glitter gems that we used for the last card, just to glitz that up a little, and that's that one finished. So then for this next card, we're going to start off with the technique that we used for the first card. So we're going to ink this up with our little ink pad that we made, and we're going to give it a little spritz, and then we're going to stamp it, and we're going to do that all round the outside. And then I'm going to grab my blender pen and just move some of that ink about a bit. And we can store our little wet wipe ink pad in like a lock seal bag or something like that, and it will last a little while, so we'll be able to use that again. So then I've cut 2 circles from this blue cardstock, and they're both about 5 1/4 inches. And on this one, which is going to be the back one, I'm going to cut 1/2 inch off one side, then I'm going to twizzle it round, and I'm going to line it up at the 4 1/2 inch mark, so that's nice and flat there. Then I know that the line that I'm going to score here is going to be parallel, so then I'm going to score that line there, and then I'm going to add a bit of glue above that line, and then I'm going to line this up and glue that over the top, and that will make my card blank. And then I'm going to let glue on this layer, and then I'm lining this up so that I know where I want to stamp my sentiment. So then I'm going to stamp my sentiment down here, and then this is the bird die that I've cut. I've left all of the kind of waste in the die. I cut it from watercolor cardstock, which I think made it easier, like everything just kind of came out together. So I popped out these bits here that I didn't want, but the rest I left in. So I'm going to glue that onto there, and I coloured that with my Karin markers again. And then I'm going to pop a foam pad behind this extra flower that I've done. I'm going to pop that up just here. So that circle's about 3 inches, and the blue one that I've got here is about 1/4 of an inch bigger than that. So I'm going to back that there. And then I'm going to pop some foam pads on the back of there. And then I'm going to pop that on there. And there's that card finished. So then for my final card, I'm going to use the same trick that we used before with the embossing folder. So I'm going to ink it up with this blue ink again. And then just as I did before, I'm just going to spritz some watercolour cardstock and pop it through my die cutting machine. So then we've got that lovely panel. So then I've got this die cut bird, and like you can see, I've left all the stuff in again. And I'm going to use this ink that we used earlier. And then I'm also going to add some blue, it's the balmy blue, and some basic grey. And then I'm going to colour my bird with these inks, so we get kind of a much more subtle effect. So then I can scribble that off so that I've got no grey left on there anymore, and then I can go in and do the blue with the same brush. I'll scribble that off and go in with the yellow. And then I'm just going to add some crumb cake here and some early espresso there. And then I'll use some yellow for the centres of the flowers. And then I'll use the pink for the flowers themselves. Then for this one, I'm going to create an arch card. And you'll see that my biggest arch is slightly wider than the actual card blank. So all I'm going to do is just cut around this arch at the top there. So then I'm going to create an arch card blank in the same way that I did with the other shaped card. So I'm just going to cut it like this so that this is over the side and doesn't cut off the fold. So then I've got my arch card blank, I've got this piece, and I've got a frame that I created from that bright pink cardstock. So I'm going to glue this onto my card front, and then I'm going to add some foam strips behind my frame. And then I'm also going to add some foam pads behind the bird. And I'm going to make sure to try and trap those pieces that could push out with the foam pads as well. So then I can add my frame onto the front of my card. So then I'm just going to use this Sending You Love and Light stamp. I'm going to heat emboss it onto this spare piece of pink cardstock, and then I'm going to grab my white embossing powder, and then I'm going to cut around the sentiment. So then I'm going to pop this on with foam pads, and then I pop a couple of foam pads behind my sentiment as well. So then there's that final card finished. So then there we've got all 5 of today's cards. I really hope that you enjoyed exploring different ways of using the faux watercolour technique with me. I'd love to know which cards are your favourite. Please do let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below. You can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below. And there's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.